In this video, we practice reading the textual apparatus of the Greek New Testament Reader's Edition for Romans 5, chapter 1. I encourage you to be in a place where you can fully engage your resources. This video will have two different lecture pauses, and really you are doing most of the work in this video as I guide you through the act of reading the apparatus with respect to Romans 5:1. So if you are not in a place where you can sort of fully engage your resources for the class, I ask you to return to this video when you are in a space where you can do that. So let's go ahead and look over to what Romans 5:1 looks like in our Greek Reader's Edition. So over here on the left, I have screenshotted the Reader's Edition and how variants show up in that version of the Greek New Testament. That is this one, the one that is assigned for this class and that is assigned for the Greek 1 class. And then over here on the right, I have the UBS 5, which gives you, as you can see, a fuller apparatus than does the Reader's Edition of the Greek New Testament. So because the Reader's Edition of the Greek New Testament gives you footnotes with parsing information for words, it has less room to give you information about textual variants. UBS 5 and most other Greek New Testaments that are not Reader's Editions, will not have footnotes with respect to parsing, so they have more space to give a fuller apparatus. So if you compare the left and the right side here, you'll see that what is on the right not only has more information about the variants, that is, it gives you more textual witnesses to the different variants, or if there are additional variants in a particular verse. That is to say, sometimes the Reader's Edition will only give you the two most common variants, wherein there may actually be more variants on that particular word or phrase. So not only will the UBS give you more of the variants that are there, it'll also give you more verses with variants. So you notice on the right side we have 3 different verses here listed with variants. 2 of them are also listed in the UBS Reader's Edition, but 1 of them is not. And then finally, it also gives you more manuscript evidence to each of those particular variants. We will be engaging with the one on the left, not the one on the right. But I would encourage you, if you have not already picked up this resource, the non-Reader's Edition of the Greek New Testament, and particularly the United Bible Society's version of the Greek New Testament, I would encourage you to be sort of on the lookout for that particular resource. So, how these 2 different resources signal a textual variant is slightly different as well. So the Greek Reader's Edition is always just going to asterisk a word that there is a variant with respect to that word or the phrase in which the word appears. That is the case over here on the left. We have after a comment, an asterisk, and then down at the bottom, the information. And then over on the right, you'll see the non-Reader's Edition gives a specific numbered footnote to each of the variants. So as I said, you are going to be doing a lot of the work in this video. That the lecture pauses are meant to sort of guide you through reading the apparatus and determining what different external witnesses are associated with the different variants. And so to get at this, we're going to start by identifying the words that constitute the textual problem. And I want you to do this both in Greek and how they are translated into English. So I am going to go ahead and give you a little bit more space here as far as screen goes, and I'm going to go away and let you look at this on the screen here, or preferably actually from your own Reader's Edition. Identify the words that constitute the problem, so it's either going to be a word or a phrase, and then just as importantly, how each one is going to be translated in English. So what the difference is between the 2 words or phrases. All right, so you should have found that ekomen is the variant, and the Greek Reader's Edition just gives us 2 different options. Either ekomen with an omicron or echomen with an omega. So the change of one letter. And what this change of one letter does is it changes the mood of the verb. What is printed in the reader's edition is the indicative. We have peace. Whereas the omega reading is the subjunctive. Let us have peace. So remember, the subjunctive is the mood of possibility or probability. In this case, it would be a hortatory subjunctive urging a particular action. Let us have peace. Whereas the indicative is indicating, as the indicative mood does, indicating a fact that already is. We have peace. It's stating our peace is a fact already versus an encouragement to possibly have peace or probably have peace if we do that thing, if we are encouraged to do that thing. So those are our two different options, and we're going to move further into, and this is going to be more work for you here, explaining the textual support for each one of these variants. So once again, I am going to make myself a little bit smaller here. And what you are looking at is the different, what these different letters mean, or what these different symbols mean with respect to each of our variants. So echomen in the subjunctive, let us have peace, has the support of these witnesses, and echomen in the indicative has the support of these witnesses. So what I want you to do is, again, utilizing your resources here. This is going to be key, that you have access to these resources. The reading from this week that introduced textual criticism, the previous lecture slides in which I began to introduce textual criticism, a manuscript list of the Greek New Testament, and particularly the one from Wikipedia. The Wikipedia list of New Testament manuscripts that I have linked on Moodle is particularly helpful. So as a professor, I do not always say, go check Wikipedia for the information, but this is a few well-curated lists of the different types of manuscripts. And so what these different things or places are going to do, these different resources are going to do, they're going to tell you what the different symbols mean. So what I want you to do is make a list for each of the variants. For the indicative echomen and the subjunctive echomen, list what the manuscripts, which manuscripts support each one, and then next to what the manuscript is, so the name of it, also write what kind of manuscript it is, whether it's a papyrus manuscript, a uncial manuscript, a minuscule manuscript, and also write the date of it. So this should take you a little while since there are several witnesses to each of the variants. And once you unpause and come back, I will give you my list and make some comments on the support for each one of these readings. All right, now that you have come back and made your list of support for the variant readings, I'll go ahead and show you what I have. So we're going to start over on the subjunctive, actually, because the uncial Sinai Atticus, that little asterisk, tells us that this is the first reading, or the original reading, the non-corrected or the non-changed reading of the uncial Sinai Atticus, which is probably our most important witness for this particular variant. It comes from the 4th century, and what we find is that someone actually, a scribe later, came along and corrected Sinai Atticus to read the indicative. So the original reading of Sinai Atticus had the subjunctive, and then it was later corrected to read the indicative. Same thing for Uncial Vaticanus, that the original reading of Vaticanus from the 4th century had the subjunctive, and then it was corrected 2 different times. In the second correction, the second scribe that came along and corrected it to the, or changed it to the indicative. And then we have several other uncials, 3 other uncials mentioned with respect to the subjunctive, let us have peace, as well as a few minuscules. We have one other minuscule for echomen. Then we have some of the Byzantine manuscripts. That PT after the BYZ is sort of a part of the Byzantine witnesses have the subjunctive, and then another part of the Byzantine witnesses, and this is a very large group of manuscripts has the subjunctive. So when we're looking at this, you can see that just as to sheer numbers, the subjunctive actually has a whole lot more support, as indicated by the Reader's edition of the Greek New Testament. It also has sort of more weighty support. That is to say that it has 5 different uncial readings, and particularly it has the original readings of Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. So even the uncials that support the indicative reading in this verse are corrections. They are not the first thing that was written in those uncials. So the older versions, the older uncials, are going to have the subjunctive ekomen, let us have peace, whereas the later corrected or changed uncials are going to have the indicative, we have peace. And what this all indicates is that when we sort of weigh all of the external evidence here, is that the external evidence actually favors the subjunctive ekomen, let us have peace, despite the fact that it is printed in the UBS and also in the Reader's edition of the UBS. They have decided to print the indicative, we have peace, in the main text. And there's very good reasons that they have decided this. They have looked at the external evidence and they are not ignorant that the external evidence actually seems to favor the subjunctive. But the other part of weighing textual problems, or another part, I should say, of weighing textual problems, is to look at the so-called internal evidence, why these changes might have happened. Then you sort of weigh both the external evidence and the internal evidence, and decide based on all of that weight what you think the best reading is. And so in this case, the editors of the UBS have decided that the indicative is the best reading, and they've decided that probably or mostly on account of internal evidence. So later on in this course, when we engage part 2 of doing textual criticism, we'll practice weighing internal evidence, and we'll look back to this same verse and look at why these editors might have decided on the basis of internal evidence, despite the external evidence of these manuscript witnesses, that they decided that the indicative was the best reading to print in the main text of the Reader's edition.